Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of our review of the map that has everyone talking, Terra Swoop Force. Last episode I addressed the details and buildings and aesthetics of the game, and this episode I want to address the other 50% of the game, the mechanics. Now it may seem like I'm being extremely critical of these guys, but I actually had a really fun time enjoying the majority of this game, so please don't take this as a negative review. I really enjoyed it and I loved the map. The mechanics of the game itself are very simple and easy to understand. You wear an elytra to fly through the tunnels and don't touch the ground. I love this minimalist approach. While this mechanic can be really interesting and enjoyable, I would have liked to have explored the built-in mechanics of the elytra a little further. For example, all the tunnels seem to move in one direction. Is this so it's intuitive where we're supposed to go? Because you can create other types of tunnels like a full U-turn or a roundabout somewhere and have it still be intuitive and obvious where you're supposed to go. The capabilities of the elytra could have been explored a lot more if the levels varied more in terms of path. However, the obstacles were fleshed out. The biggest problem, the huge letdown I have with this game, was the extreme difficulty curve. I found the first level pretty enjoyable to play, but unfortunately I finished it without dying, and thus I was never able to explore the entire level, and my time spent on that level was minimal. The second level was also very enjoyable, and it felt a lot more balanced. I died 6 times, which was enough for me to explore the entire level and try a few things out, but not enough for me to get angry or stressed. And I wish levels 1 and 3 were just like level 2, because if they were, then maybe I would have said this is my favourite map of all time. Let's talk about difficulty a little bit more, especially in the third level. The third level was way too difficult and way too punishing. There's a difference between fun difficulty and punishing difficulty, and this particular level of difficulty was punishing. Very, very punishing. I found Dark Souls less stressful for this. But it wasn't the slime pillars or the nether areas or even that misleading gush that makes me say this. Every time I died to those, I felt like it was a fair death and I deserved it. But those tiny spaces I had to crawl through were not fun in the slightest. They felt unreasonable and felt like a nuisance instead of a challenge, especially since they appear so far into the level, making failure even more punishing. Instead of making a really tiny hole to fly through, make a giant hole that the player has to navigate through. This way, when the player dies, it feels more earned. Or, if you really wanted the player to go through a tiny hole, introduce it earlier in the level so the deaths feels less punishing, and the player can spend more time mastering the skill of going through them. The tiny spaces that far into the level just felt unfair. After I beat this level, I didn't feel a sense of achievement like I did with the other 2 levels. I felt a sense of, oh geez, thank God that's over. And that's not something you want to have in your game. I checked the forums and other people also agreed that the third level was extremely difficult. And I agree. But the way difficulty was handled in the map was probably the biggest downside of the whole experience. The first level was too easy, the second level was perfect, but the third level was just way too hard. Now, the ending to the story was a twist I really did not see coming. For a map filled with light-hearted comedy and builds, this got pretty dark. Themes of insanity, heartbreak, death, and global destruction were not themes I were expecting to be explored, and it was added in a way that still stayed true to the light-hearted nature of the map, despite the themes themselves being dark, and so the ending did not feel out of place at all. The voice acting for Dr. Bunny by Zilubez was very well done. He was able to communicate the comedy of the character and still managed to give an uncomfortable feeling about Dr. Bunny.
My side, well, after we ran out of actual food, we had to train our stomachs to survive off the drill itself. Which didn't taste so bad. After a while, that is.
This, combined with the character animations and facial expressions, truly made Dr. Barney's character come alive.
Minowski. Poor Minowski. Where did you go, Minowski?
Also, when Barney wears the suit, the voice sounds different and is a detail which also made Barney feel like a real person and not someone just talking into a microphone.
These look completely different.
This is great. So perfect. Such mastercraft.
The ending dialogue was well written. It was just enough to communicate Dr. Barney's history and motivations, and it never felt like the story was being force-fed to me. It gave me plenty of room to interpret for myself what had happened. I did feel the skeleton was placed in an obvious place though, and I would have appreciated it more if it were hidden in a place where I could discover it for myself. So you are eventually prompted to give your wingsuit to Dr. Barney, and honestly I spent a little while trying to figure out how to avoid this because I knew Barney was not to be trusted. However, I had to give it to him because the story needed to progress. If I were personally writing this, I would have made it so you could choose to destroy the suit and then have Barney end his life on his own terms. The ending would be the same, but the pathway to that ending would be slightly altered and would have added a huge layer of depth to the story and Barney's character. The destruction sequence at the end was very well executed. I felt a lot of tension trying to find a way out of the drill before it exploded. The sounds and particle effects and changing in lighting made this possible. The cut to black and silence after this overwhelming stimulation in sounds and visuals was awesome. When the credits and music started playing, I felt like the map had a more emotional impact on me than I was expecting. All in all, the ending was just beautifully executed. So I just want to take a moment to talk about the music by Isaac Wilkins. I appreciate the restraint in music. It was only used while I was flying, when I was getting ready to fly, and it was used during the credits. The lack of music during the introduction, Dr. Barney's monologue, and the destruction sequence made its eventual usage even more effective. The music fit well with the gliding mechanics of the game, but I would have liked to have heard a different song every now and then, because the soundtrack started to feel repetitive by the third stage. Were you trying to minimize on file size? I don't think adding 2 more songs which were different from each other but sound similar would have had too much of an issue. There were some bugs I encountered while playing, but that wasn't really a huge deal. I could clip through the elevator, for example. My main issue were the constant crashes I encountered while playing this map during level transitions. I'm not sure if this is Minecraft's fault or the fault of the map, but it was really annoying when it happened. Also, I tried playing the map on my laptop just to see how it handled performance, and it did not go very well. I have a pretty decent laptop, and the frame rate made the game just unplayable. Again, probably a limitation of Minecraft and not the map's fault, but it's something that's worth pointing out. So my final thoughts. This map was really well executed. The mechanics are very simple, but the attention to detail were the things that turned this decent map into a great map, and that's why so many people are praising it. The presentation of the game itself is nothing short of outstanding, and I would love to see more of this in future maps. While the way the difficulty was handled and the crashes were a huge downside for me, the benefits of this map outweigh the flaws for sure. If you're not prone to rage quitting and getting extremely angry, I would recommend this map for you. All in all, great map, go play it. Thanks for watching. The voice acting for Dr. Barney by Skizz, how do you pronounce that? Zilubez, was very well done.